Everybody, welcome back again tonight. Tonight we have the after party for Chris.
You're muted.
Oh my!
You know that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody else can hear me. That's fine. Everybody in the real world can hear me. It's only you that
You're
can't
gonna
hear
keep
me.
talking.
Yes, it's only you that can't hear me. Everybody in the real world can still hear me. It doesn't matter. Okay, right. Now that all the technical issues have been sorted, everybody, thank you all for coming back tonight. We have Chris Shelton here. This is the after party for Chris. We have been joined tonight by Bill, Manda, Brainbug, and Rib. So, Chris, if you just want to just tell everyone who you are again, and we'll work our way around the room, see if anyone has any questions for you.
Cool. I'm Chris Shelton. I'm a YouTuber, author, podcaster, former Scientologist of 27 years. So I was involved for a little while. And now I'm out. I've been out for the last 7 years, talking Scientology, destructive cults, mind control, propaganda, sociology, psychology, neurology, etc. I'm kind of all over
stuff.
And I love it. I love finding out about this stuff and learning about it and trying to help other people so they don't get caught up in extremist mindsets.
Rib, I seen you in the live chat. You said you were would like to come in and maybe had a few questions for him. Have you anything that you would like to ask Chris to get us started?
Yeah, so basically, the kind of analogy that I can kind of give to it is when Ray Comfort was talking to Matt Dillahunty, right? He basically said that Matt said that he thought that he felt the Holy Spirit and he thought that he like knew the risen God and everything else like that, right? But Ray said that because he didn't know for like absolute undeniable certainty that he wasn't a real Christian. So basically, kind of circling back, the question that I have is like, now that you've been out for so long, have any Scientologists said to you, or that you weren't a real Scientologist, or you didn't really believe in the stuff that, has any of that stuff happened?
Absolutely, yeah, because it's a classic defense mechanism for group members, right? You could never have been a real one because real ones don't leave.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a classic footprint of an extremist mindset to go to no true Scotsman's fallacy that way.
Yeah.
It's funny because actually I've had. Are you guys aware of the fact that there's sort of this in-between stage when people leave the official church but still do Scientology practices on their own in their homes or with each other?
No.
I'd heard about it.
It's called independent Scientology. It's a tiny, little tiny movement. I mean, I think if I was going to be really generous, I'd say maybe there's 1,000 independent Scientologists on the whole planet, right? But they can be just as snarky and extremist as the Scientologists, and they're the ones who've come after me more for that than Scientology has.
The fact that they left it, they had problems with the church or maybe problems with Sea Org itself, but then went and did their own thing. So as we end up with Christianity with 30,000 denominations, we've now got Scientology with 2.
Yeah.
I guess those people see it more as a personal affront to them because they, you know what I mean? Because they take it more personally, I suppose.
That's right. That's exactly right. They get very, very offended very easily over their Scientology beliefs because you find in the real world that, not too many people are super keen on L. Ron Hubbard, right? And, his name kind of got kind of mud, right? As it should be. And so they're not any more successful at spreading the good word of Scientology than the church is. So, they end up taking a pretty bunkered position after a while.
But would they?
I have got respect for him in certain ways, though.
Who, Hubbard?
I mean, L. Ron Hubbard. He clearly was an intelligent guy. He clearly was a very good writer, and he was a very convincing orator. And he also took his knowledge of, in particular, intellectual property rights and intellectual property law, and applied that to his religion, and then used it to avoid the massive tax problem that he was having with the United States. Like, really, in certain ways, he was a genius, really. You know what I mean? You've got to kind of have a grudging respect for that. He was a dick, but he wasn't stupid, Knowing
everything I know about him, I don't have a grudging respect for him, but I definitely get what you're saying. I just want you to know that some of the things that you are grudgingly respecting him for were actually not his ideas.
I mean,
That
he was
doesn't
a
surprise
nut
me
job and
either,
a con
to be
man.
fair.
Yeah, he was a con man. He was also a believer. He was a complicated guy. He might have suffered from temporal lobe epilepsy as something we thought as a potential reason for some of his fanaticism and some of his ideas. There's all the physiological symptoms of it kind of line up. He checks a lot of boxes for TLE, but it doesn't give him a pass. He was still an immoral megalomaniac, and I just really can't think of the guy any other way than that.
Plus all the drugs. I mean, that could not have helped.
Drugs, alcohol, any number of things. And also 2 strokes in the 70s, and a pathological liar. I mean, narcissism, serial philanderer, bigamist. He was married to 2 women for a year without either of them knowing about each other's existence. I mean, he was a real cad, this guy.
I'm sure he was worth a lot of money, though, at the end.
He was.
With his wives, did he have any kids? Did they stay on with Scientology? Did they just take the money and run?
Yeah. No. Nobody took him for a ride that way. He was taking other people for a ride. After World War II, he had a wife and 2 kids up in Washington State. He abandoned them, hooked up with another woman down in LA, took off with her, got married, and neither of those people knew about each other until Hubbard took his new wife up to Washington State. And it was like, who are you? What's this all about? And then, things socially kind of collapsed after that. But then that was around the time around that time or shortly thereafter is when Dianetics came out, and, the world became a different place for him.
So, Chris, did you hear about the thing in Clearwater? Or I think it was like a week or 2 ago, the councilman who accused them of racketeering. What do you think of that?
Yes, that is Mark Bunker. He was a newly elected council member. I've had him on my podcast actually after that. And he's an old school Scientology watcher. I mean, he goes back. And the fact that he's on city council in Clearwater is awesome. Scientology tried to do everything they could to stop it, and they couldn't, which tells you that they're really not as powerful as their reputation make out to be, because they could not stop it. And believe me, they tried. Anyway, he brought up the fact that Scientology should be potentially investigated, and maybe they should ask the FBI for some assistance or to investigate what Scientology is up to, because they have a substantial number of purchases of properties all throughout the downtown Clearwater area that they're kind of just sitting on. And it's leverage against the city, and it's not a position that the city council should be or wants to be in. He brought this up as maybe we should look into this and have the FBI potentially check out, RICO statute violations. And they, the rest of the city council said, we don't think we're going to do that. And that's basically complete cowardice is what they're demonstrating. And it's pretty shameful. And
do you think that they violated RICO?
I think that a case could definitely be made for that. I've done podcasts with people who know a lot more about that than I do, where we talked about the potential for RICO, prosecution, because that's how you bust up the mafia. That's how RICO was actually created in the first place. And Scientology operates very much like a mafia operation. And it would be the way to go to pursue prosecution against them. But it's complicated, it's difficult, it is very time consuming to do that prosecution. And so far, nobody's really interested.
Well, you mentioned that Clearwater was once known as the Mecca of Scientology. Yeah. Do you think him living there is the reason that he's been so against them, or do you think it started before that?
Who's him?
The guy in the city council.
Oh, Mark Bunker. That's his name.
Mark. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. I'm terrible with names.
Yeah, no, he's cool. He's been old school critics. I mean, he actually has an outstanding restraining order. Like, he can't be within X number of feet of Scientologists. They actually tried to bring that out once he got elected to city council, because there's no Scientologists on the city council, but there are Scientologists on the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. In fact, there's multiple Scientologists on that board. And they tried to get the police to, like, hey, Mark Bunker can't be on the Downtown Development Board because restraining order, right? And the police were like, nah, I don't think we're super interested in enforcing it on this. So so that was a positive mark for them on that one.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Brainbug, you've been very quiet. Have you any questions for Chris? Yeah, no, just unmute and talk. I'll shoot you. Yeah.
I got myself muted because I got some noise in the background, so I apologize for that. All I wanted to say, really what I wanted to come in here to mention was, I mean, we can't help but look at the parallels between Scientology, at least the earlier days of it, and then the early days of the Mormon Church, and kind of the way that it spread. There's so many parallels there that you could really dive into, and you see a pattern of the way that essentially, what could be considered a cult blossoms into a religion, a major religion, and it does cause one to reflect back on the proposed early origins of other religions. With Prophet Muhammad for Islam, and of course Peter for the Christianity. So you really see this pattern of an individual bringing forth this idea, convincing a small group of followers, that they had some divine prophecy, some divine intervention into some insight into the bigger picture. And if you follow me, I'll teach you how to do it too, or I'll take you there, and it builds there and spreads from there. It's really quite a fascinating piece of our sociology.
It is.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, quite a few. I mean, you have a corruption of a social network or a social hierarchy. You have an abusive relationship which is set up, which is what makes it a cult. And I mean, Joseph Smith was a very abusive guy. He kept telling everybody that the angels were telling him to do it, but at the end of the day, who gives a shit? Yeah. If you're diddling little girls, you're an abusive asshole, and that's who Joseph Smith was. L. Ron Hubbard was not so different. He was a serial philanderer. I do not know of, and will never make the claim that he was a pedophile. I don't know of any instance of that. But he definitely was a philanderer and serial cheater, and he couldn't keep money. It's the grifter sort of complex, and he did have a talent for writing. His Pulp Fiction was there's nothing enviable there. It's pretty bad stuff. And he, after the war, was bouncing around without a lot of money and without a lot of resources, and he was begging the VA to up his pension and stuff because he was so desperate for money. And that's when he got involved in the occult. And then shortly thereafter, within a couple of years, he had invented Dianetics, which is just really hypnotism rebranded. So he always, there's no way these things could have all happened without him premeditatedly knowing he was running a con. Yet at the same time, we have private writings showing that he was a mess psychologically and physically. And he couldn't admit to it because he was also megalomaniacal. So all of these things go into this pot, and you get Dianetics. You just go, Jesus. And people loved it because they thought it was a science, not a religion. In 1950, that was a huge thing. And it was the modern science of mental health. And when you look at the state of psychiatry and psychology in 1950, it was pretty fucked. So, to be blunt, I hope this is okay. I can swear here, right?
Oh, not a fucking chance.
Okay, okay, good. Fucking A. So, anyway, so he, so he was, plowing into this field called self-help before it was a field, before anybody was really down with self-help.
Yeah.
There was no big sections at the B. Daltons or Waldens of self-help books and philosophies and stuff. He was actually an early runner into that field, and Dianetics took America by storm, and it was big, and people loved it. And then they found out that it didn't deliver on any of the promises that Hubbard was making, and he went bankrupt, and then he got bailed out. And then he went bankrupt, and he got bailed out again. And that's when Scientology came around. And it was tiny. It was like 30, 40 people to start with. It was tiny. And he grew it. And most of the 1950s is the story of Scientology growing slowly but surely internationally. And by the 1960s, it started getting legitimately big.
Like, it shocks me that it's that far back, because it is only reaching, well, maybe the status of notoriety, reaching over here to the UK and people like that. Definitely within my lifetime, even though it's been around since the 50s, it's not something I ever heard of until possibly this last 10 years. You wouldn't even have been in Scientology, and I'm only finding out about it. Like,
well,
I'll be honest, I remember the Church of Scientology trying to indoctrinate me and my parents when I was about 12 or 13, something like that.
Let me blow your mind for a second and tell you that Dublin was a place that Hubbard set up shop in 1957 in order to research and figure out how to get new people in. And that was when they developed the personality test that they use as a way of getting people in. And that was actually a place of some importance in Scientology's history.
do you think it's down to the fact that they've got some big names now? Like, you've got people like Tom Cruise and stuff like that. It definitely would have, made it more noticeable to everybody else around the world when you get somebody like that.
Yeah. There's a good argument could be made, a case could be made, that if John Travolta in the 70s and Tom Cruise in the 80s had not happened, it's possible Scientology wouldn't still be around.
Yeah. That's what I'm. The actual having that face to punt forward. Top Gun is a Scientologist. Come on, catch yourself on, like.
Exactly, and that's around the time that it happened too. So, yeah, it was a big deal getting Tom Cruise, and John Travolta was just as big of a deal. It's just most of us don't remember.
Yeah,
but in the 70s and early 80s, John Travolta. I mean, there was Staying Alive, there was Grease, Saturday Night Fever. He came from TV with Welcome Back, Kotter, which was a hit show. Everybody knew it. And then he goes into movies, and he's huge. And then he has a resurgence in the 80s with the whole Look Who's Talking movies, and then Pulp Fiction happens. So John Travolta was a key player in that as well. And he's always been huge on promoting Scientology.
And with his... I might be wrong in saying this. I can't remember where I got this statistic, and I'm going to make a statement that's probably fucking wrong. But self-help books and things like that for the, the housewives and things like that, very, very popular in the 50s and 60s. Even when people didn't know what they were doing, they realized if you could write a book on it and sound coherent and, put your point across, then you can tap into that. So knowing what works from his author background and the self-help and things like that there, knowing how to, in my opinion, maybe manipulate people to get them to think a certain way, having that background definitely would have helped with Scientology.
Oh yeah, huge. And also, when you cast back to the 1950s, you see culturally that it was a product of the time. Sci-fi cults were everywhere in the 1950s. It wasn't just Scientology. Hubbard was glomming onto a wave that was happening at that time, because this was post-World War II, where science was king and communists were evil. And, the world was like, everything was wide open and new, because atomic weapons were like, what? That was fresh and new. And like, what could science do for us? If it can do that, what else can it do, right? And science fiction was a thing. And I mean, it was a real product of its times in many, many ways.
I think Toy Story, as a silly point, puts that across really well at the start. He's playing with his wee Western toys and things like that, and then people hit space and everything changes.
That's right.
Everything
changes.
Yeah, the whole culture changed. The world got bigger and stuff like that. And sci-fi was massive.
Exactly.
Silly sci-fi, bad sci-fi. Some of it good, but
That's right. That's right. And so the idea of,
If I could draw another parallel there, it's the celebrity endorsement thing. I think that is really influential and really is a large reason why this flat Earth movement is still alive, because you got celebrity athletes and social media celebrities endorsing this concept. It's kind of a interesting parallel there as well.
That's right. So yeah, Hubbard actually wrote policy in 1955. I think it was Project Celebrity or something like that. It was very bold. It was very much, we want celebrities. And Hubbard had some Hollywood experience, so he kind of considered himself a little bit of a Hollywood personality, even though he really wasn't. And he was all about getting celebrities in. And it's something Scientology's worked on over the decades. And they've had some pretty interesting people hooked up with Scientology over the years for brief periods of time sometimes. I heard somebody, well, I think it was Jethro Tull or something, or somebody in that group. There was...
that's the flute guy, isn't it? That's the guy that plays the flute, yes.
Yeah, who's the guy who wrote Naked Lunch? That author. He was Edward Burroughs. He was a Scientologist for a while. Guys like that, I think I heard that the Rolling Stones, I heard Led Zeppelin wrote Stairway to Heaven where the Clearwater facility is now. I don't know if that's true or not.
Mentioning Clearwater again and things like that there, and Amanda brought up the whole court case and stuff. What is the worst thing you think that Scientology has done, or the Sea organization, or, is there something in their past, obviously maybe public or whatever, or do you have a secret? Do you have an exclusive? But what do you think, something you've experienced or seen, what do you think the worst that Scientology has done?
Lisa McPherson, officially. Lisa McPherson was a woman who was a Scientologist who died under Scientology care. 95 or 96, I think it happened. There was prosecution. They were actually they were investigating with an eye toward bringing charges against Scientologists, actual criminal charges. And Scientology played this tremendous song and dance for about a year or two, whining and dining a lot of people and putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the coroner to change the medical report from potential homicide to accidental death. And it was one of the last things that coroner ever did professionally, because she got run out of town, basically quit, ruined, and, was just like, I don't want to ever have anything to do with anything ever again. And they avoided prosecution. And that woman was somebody that had had a psychotic episode on the street after Scientology processing, got taken to a hospital. Like, she got into a car accident. The paramedics came. She started stripping right in front of them and talking mumbo jumbo. So they took her to the hospital and they admitted her, and the Scientologists came and got her out of the hospital because they hate psychology and psychiatry, and that's just torture and horribleness. So
the self-help books are great. Yeah.
Keep her in the hospital for that. So they came and got her, and they put her in the Clearwater facility, and they took care of her, but they didn't take care of her because none of them knew what the fuck they were doing or dealing with. And they tried doing L. Ron Hubbard's advice on her, and after, I think it was 4 or 5 days, she was, clearly dying. I mean, they were trying to shove food into her with a horse syringe and stuff because she wouldn't eat.
Oh my
God. She was
God.
on the walls. She was psychotic. I mean, she'd gone nuts. And
wasn't she schizophrenic?
No, she wasn't schizophrenic. She had a psychotic.
Right, okay.
And anyway, then she ended up dying of malnutrition. And they tried racing her to a hospital, the hospital that was the farthest away from them in town, by the way, because a Scientologist doctor was there. They rode right by the other 2 hospitals. And by the time they got her there, she was dead. And that's a really, really bad story. And there was a lot of cover up. and there was a shredding of documents, and there was every other thing you can imagine to keep David Miscavige out of a courtroom and out of jail, because his hands were personally involved in that. So
why are they so against psychology?
L. Ron Hubbard was knocking the competition, and he also was vindictive, a very vindictive guy. And what he had done is he had initially proposed Dianetics back in 1950. He'd sent it to the APA and the AMA. And they said, I've got this grand new discovery, this wonderful therapy. You guys should run with it. It'll be awesome. And just pay me royalties and everything will be great, right? And they looked at it and said, yeah, no, we're really not interested. Thanks, but no thanks. We got, try doing some real science and come back to us. He was furious. If there was one thing L. Ron Hubbard didn't like, it was rejection letters. He actually bragged about it in lectures. I mean, he would talk about this. So he was not down with getting rejected by the APA and the AMA. And so he decided to make it his mission in life to just trash psychiatry. Every lecture, like he just ragged on them. And made it his business to make Scientologists, Dianeticists, and then eventually Scientologists just hate anything having to do with psychiatry and psychology.
Well,
they do.
Yeah, you set the foundation there to hate it, and no matter what they come out with, it's clearly against them. They know best.
That's right. And they still operate. Scientology to this day will still go on and on and on about lobotomies and transorbital leucotomies and how they're just a bunch of butchers and they just want to drug all your kids. And I mean, it's really extreme, nonsensical stuff that they put out. And I've gone both ways, right? In Scientology, I dive deep into psychiatry. I was a studier, I was a thinker, I was a learner. I liked learning stuff. So when they said it was bad, I went, okay, let's find out how bad. And they have put out documentaries and DVDs laying out the history of psychiatry and demonstrations of all the barbaric shit that they got up to over the years, going all the way back to Bedlam and torturing insane people and stuff. I mean, the crap that mental hospitals used to get up to was pretty barbaric stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the history of psychiatry, and they point to that and keep going. That's who it really is. That's who they are. That's what those people really want to do to you, and they have no idea what they're doing. So you got to come to us because we do know what we're doing. And
that's the thing. That is the thing with science. Science does change, and they focus on what they fucked up on. Just to jump in and say that Mama Atheist, I know, has to bounce. She has a show coming up tonight with Eric Murphy.
Oh.
So, Amanda.
Already? So soon? You just got here.
Bye, Amanda.
I gotta go, guys, but I will talk to you later. Talk to you later, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for coming.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
If anybody wants to jump in, just hit me up on Twitter. I'll let you in. But, sorry. Go on ahead, Chris. I interrupted.
Oh, no. Good. That was pretty much the thought. Is that that's how Scientology promotes psychiatry now, even now to this day. They don't have any recognition that psychiatry has changed, improved, is more scientific now, is a little bit more on the rails. I mean, there's still problems. There's still huge problems. But
using possibly, I think Ken Ham uses this as, I can't remember the guy's name, but he did drawings of, different fetal development and things like that. And the pictures were not perfect. They were put in books. He says that this is proof that evolution is wrong and all the rest of it. But, he was called out. It was slightly, and they still do use it in some technical books because the guesses that he made on some things were correct. But, they focus on them things. They focus on the mistakes that the sciences have made to try and disprove, to prove that they are correct.
Exactly. It's the same kind of disingenuous argument that Scientology makes about psychiatry.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
Were you talking about Lucia? Is that who they were talking about them? Ken Ham using about his thoughts on bird evolution and all that?
Yeah,
what we're looking at?
It was different animals, and the guy drew pictures of them, and the pictures weren't exactly what they should be, but the point that he was trying to put across was correct. And then they focus on... No, sorry, go on ahead, Brian. There's a wee bit of a lag between us. You go on ahead.
Oh, I was just so Haeckel's drawings on the embryonics, the way that he drew the stages of development, essentially going through different stage of evolutionary development with having the gills and the smaller stages, and then like limbs receding in snakes and things like that. Yeah, so there were just some drawings from the 19th century. So yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to off rail anything. I just wanted to clarify who you're talking about, because there's a lot of people that they quote, that apologists will quote scientists out of context. It's a point of contention for me. Anyway, go on.
Would you have an apologetic, alternative for in Scientology? You know, where there is Christian apologetics, do you have Scientology apologetics, or do you just have people that come and scream and shout about it, like more so preachers than apologetics?
Yeah, probably. I mean, your run-of-the-mill Scientologist at public level I was talking about, they'll engage, they'll argue about it and stuff. So long as you're not me, they won't engage with me. But you have that. You've got a catechism. You've got a thing called the Scientology Handbook, which breaks it all down, kind of all in one book, and questions and answers about it. They've translated all of that into their website now as well, so it's all there. Yeah.
There is there other organizations of Sea Org, that aren't part of the church but are designed to bring people to the church? Is that just Sea Org?
The Sea Org is the core of Scientology. It's sort of the Vatican of Scientology, if you will. It's like that the most hardcore, and also the people who are keeping the show running.
Yeah, because I know that the Scientology would have the church. Then there is like a corporation sort of side where it isn't tied to the church but used to bring people to the church.
Okay. Well, you have basically three corporate entities that make up the Church of Science, that make up what we call or think of as Scientology. Yes. And one of them has nothing to do with Scientology at all. It's the Church of Spiritual Technology. I mean, it does have to do with Scientology, but it's not running Scientology. It's its own thing. It's more like a special project kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that place. Those are the guys. I don't know if you heard about this, but those are the guys who are converting all of L. Ron Hubbard's writings and lectures to titanium plates and nickel-plated records, so that if there's ever a nuclear war, all of L. Ron Hubbard's stuff will still be around.
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's L. Ron Hubbard achieving immortality, is what that is.
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions of dollars have been spent on that project by that corporation. It's called the Church of Spiritual Technology, or CST. It's been around since the 80s. It started out with an injection of capital from the Church of Scientology International. They gave them a few $1,000,000. And then they have gotten a lot of donations and stuff since then through fundraising efforts. And they build vaults. I think there's about 4 of them. And by vaults, I mean great big, long concrete shafts built into the ground, where in there they have stored, using state-of-the-art archival tech that they have even developed themselves, to store all of these titanium plates with L. Ron Hubbard's words etched on them, all his books, all his issues, everything he ever wrote down. They're putting it all on these plates. And all of his lectures, and there are about 5,000 of them, are being transcribed onto these nickel-plated records that can play on a solar-powered record player that they have set up down there, so that if there's a nuclear war and everybody dies, or most everybody dies, eventually somebody will dig this stuff up in a future version of society and civilization, and they will find all of L. Ron Hubbard's works.
And the cockroaches.
Along with, by the way, dictionaries and encyclopedias and reference books and everything they'll need to learn English, so that they can read L. Ron Hubbard's works. I mean, this is what's going on right now.
I guess when you already think a nuclear war and stuff has already happened, then it's not unlikely that it's going to happen again in the future, is it? Really? I guess,
Actually, I was
perfectly logical, I suppose.
Yeah, I was going to make this point earlier, and I wanted to. You kind of just made it, which is that once you buy into the very simple piece of information in Scientology that you are a spiritual entity who has lived nearly forever in the past and will live into forever into the future, you can't die. Once you buy into that piece of information, anything's possible because you've been around for almost ever. What could not have happened in the past 4 quadrillion years? Everything could have happened, right? Even Star Wars is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah.
And by the way, Scientology
in that
of that
over that period of time, everything probably has happened.
That's right. That's right.
Considering that you could possibly come back again, you could leave these instructions for yourself because your new body's not going to know English 1,000 years down the line.
Yeah, in a way. But once you're up the bridge, once you've gone through all of Scientology's, indoctrination steps and gotten to the top of their what they call the bridge to total freedom, you're supposed to become like God. So, just having a little body and running around on a planet, having a house and a car is kind of a little boring, compared to what you could be up to if you could make planets or make your own universe.
Yeah, you're making your own entire universe. So there's everybody has their own wee universe with lots of different planets, with lots of different maybe possible aliens you can be at.
That's right. The only thing I've heard that even comes close is the Mormons. And I didn't learn about them after I got out of Scientology too, because you get your own planet, your own universe, whatever. People worship you. It's wild. The Mormon upper level scriptures do have interesting parallels to some of Scientology stuff.
Does Scientologists still have their own fleet of ships? Because I know at one point they did, didn't they? Because that was how he avoided the tax, was by living in international waters. Is that still a thing?
No. There is one boat. It's called the Free Winds, and it is manned by the Sea Org, and it's run by a guy who actually was a ship's captain for many, many years. And they sail down in the ABC Islands in the Caribbean, and that is where the highest level of Scientology is delivered to the public. OT level 8 is what it's called. That's the highest it's been that they offer. So when you've done all the things you can do in Scientology, you end up going to that ship so you can do your final level, and that's the only ship they have now.
Is that also where I also heard that is where some people that they basically have as essentially prisoners, people that they really don't want to get out, get taken to that ship and basically locked up on there and never released?
That's happened. They did get away. I know one guy escaped literally over the mooring line. he had to literally get a tube, and it was a whole escape story. And then another woman was eventually let out. She was there for many years. I don't know that they have, that they necessarily have rooms that they lock you up in, because the ship is a public delivery facility. It's primarily there to service public, but there's not often a lot of public there. And what they can do is they can relegate you to some engineering room duty, or you're the guy who has to go in and scrape out the bilges every day, right? And so that's your job, that's your life, welcome to it. So basically you're in prison,
yeah.
Because I'll tell you, man, the engine room of that ship, I mean, Jesus Christ, it's a whole nother world being in the bilges of a ship. Let's just put it that way.
The funding for all of this is just a shocking amount of money that they're bringing in. Making reference point again with the Christianity there, quite recently you see on YouTube everybody's been using the video, your woman, if you've got a spare $90 and you can't get to church, put it in the post and send it to us. It's
it's such rapaciousness. I give a lot of religion a pass, but I do not give organized religion a pass, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I just think they're a bunch of con men and swindlers. I swear to God, I can't stand any of them. Drive me nuts.
I mean, that's so. The organized religion thing is really the reason that Scientology itself exists anyway, wasn't it? Because when the government initially challenged Scientology and said it's not a religion, and L. Ron Hubbard basically used money and influence of lawyers to basically say that essentially if you were going to say that Scientology wasn't a religion, then you had to apply that same thing to the Catholic Church and to other churches, and it basically would say that no religion would be allowed, which is unconstitutional, I believe. Is that right? Because it's freedom of religion. Is that like kind of...
I haven't heard that particular argument made in terms of why Scientology has religious recognition. It's shockingly easy to get religious tax exemption in the United States. And once you have that, and you have all the things that they require of you, such as rituals, a creed, the trappings of a religious organization, and followers who ardently believe in the movement. Once you have that, you got it. Like then the law is going to recognize you as a religion pretty quickly. You don't have to make big, huge arguments about that. The loss of the tax exemption is what Scientology fought tooth and claw over, and that was a decade battle.
Okay,
and they got it back by basically blackmailing or pressuring the IRS hard enough and long enough, and nobody really does that. So it was a little bit weird for the IRS to be on the receiving end of some of their blunt weapons that they had been using for decades against regular citizens, right? So it was kind of like bad guy versus bad guy, but in this case, we wanted the IRS to not capitulate, and they did, because the pressure that Scientology put them under was tremendous. People don't really, think that the IRS can be pressured, but they can. And that's what happened.
I mean, that is the thing with legal, any form of legal system and laws, is if you understand it, it can be used both ways.
That's right. And Hubbard specifically wrote policy in the church that exists to this day. It's online, you can find it, that specifically says the law can be used to harass and should be, right, in order to get our way. And Hubbard looked at the law as a tool of manipulation and control. And because Scientology is willing to throw any amount of money at lawyers and private investigators to get cases to run the way they want them to, drag them out for years, make the expenses really difficult for anybody suing them, they control that field. And so that's why they can weaponize the law against their detractors.
I was going to say, if you've got money and you've got people that understand the law and are able to not even try to win the case, but just drag it out to the point that it costs the other person too much than they're willing to pay, then they will just capitulate anyway and go, oh, fine, it's going to cost me too much, have whatever you want, essentially.
Precisely. Nailed it.
Talking about celebrities and John Travolta and Tom Cruise and people like that, whenever you make a donation to Scientology, is it a percentage? Is it a certain amount of money? Can you give what you want? Or are they actually obligated to give millions?
No, but I'll tell you this. We used to laugh out loud with each other in Scientology that the Mormons got away with only giving 10%. You know what I mean? Like, we would laugh about that. Like, because if only it was 10%, right? They are on you for money all the time. It is constant. Constant. They're like vultures. And I know I did sales in Scientology for a while. I was one of those guys. The pressure is unbelievably on your head.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask. If you're in sales, what are you selling? Because you selling the idea, or do you have join Scientology T-shirts?
No, you got books. I mean, Hubbard wrote 25, 30 books. You've got lectures. You've got all these lectures on DVDs or CDs that they sell. And Hubbard's library, like I said, it's extensive. There's thousands of lectures bundled up in packages. You don't just buy the whole package of 5,000 lectures. Not all of them have even been released yet. Some of them can't even be digitally sound restored. I mean, they're such messed up shape.
Yeah.
But they have thousands that have been released, and they're in these binders, and they've got transcripts, and it's a whole thing. And Scientologists eat this stuff up because it's Hubbard lecturing to people all through the 50s and 60s. He gave thousands of lectures, and all about the mind and life and spirits and how to audit and how to deal with people and how they work and why people work the way they do. You know, he had theories for everything. So, and what he said was true as far as Scientologists are concerned. They weren't theories. It was, this is the way it is. So you sell people these things, and these are just the materials. You also sell classes or courses where you learn this stuff in a classroom environment. And you learn how to become a counselor in Scientology, what's called an auditor.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. And those courses cost money, hundreds, even thousands of dollars each. And then you have the counseling that they do, or what's called auditing. And that is by the hour. And depending on where you're getting it and what you're receiving exactly, the rates will vary anywhere from $3,200 to $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 per block of 12 and a half hours of auditing.
500 quid a session, like.
Yeah, you could end up paying, like at the lowest levels, you know, you're going to go in and you want to get going. Maybe it'll be a couple $100 for the initial Dianetics auditing or something. But once you move up to really doing Scientology, you're going to be paying thousands of dollars for each block of this auditing. And it's going to take you anywhere from 10 to, well, not 10, let's say 20 to 30 of these blocks of auditing called intensives, 20 to 30 of them just to get to the level of clear. And then you're going to pay tens of thousands of dollars more for the confidential OT level stuff, which is where you find out about Xenu and all that stuff.
Yeah. And these are what we would refer to as the ground level public.
The grand level public?
Or the ground level, sorry. The ground level, the public, the bottom of the period.
The public paying for all this, yes. The public are the ones paying for it. The staff and the Sea Org are the ones who deliver it to them.
And getting paid 50 quid a week for that. So you're taking in £10,000 for the organisation and paying 200 to the staff.
Yep. And so we see the con. It gets internal as well as external. It is, everybody's getting con. Everybody is getting con. That's the thing about it.
Yeah, it is shocking that this still can exist.
Yeah, it really is. But once you start seeing behind the curtain, and I mean, what I've been doing the last 7 years, just diving down all these rabbit holes and learning about how people think and act and what all the principles are and stuff with this, it's so easy. It's so easy. If I didn't have a moral compass, you know, I could disappear and go reinvent myself somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is easy to do. This is not hard.
I work in sales as well, man. And not that, as you say, I have a moral compass, but yeah, I work in a garage. We work with cars and tires and things like that. And the legal limit in this country is 1.6 mil, but I always push from 2.5 because that's where it starts to get unsafe. Now, you're still legal, but your stopping distance and things like that increases. And I know exactly what you mean when you read body language and you can start to delve into people. You know, it's, if you have that, you can push a sale. You know, it is not to say easy to manipulate people, but if you know what you're doing, it's easy to do.
It is. And it's not that it's easy work. It is hard work to do it, but it's not like the techniques are that complicated or you have to go off for 4 years to figure things out. You just figure, you know, this and this and this out. And I've always referred to the cult leader playbook.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. I should probably write it because I really think I could at this point, but it's just, there's very specific things that all of these guys do. The specifics of how they do it might change and vary a little bit here and there, but what they're doing, same. Whether your name is David Koresh, Jim Jones, or L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah,
I've thank goodness Manda's left. I can say this without getting shouted at, but I've told that woman never to play poker. Ever in her life to play poker. You know, just knowing her the short amount of time that I do, she has so many hand giveaways and this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, I'm thinking this. No, you're not. You're thinking this. Now, how did you know? Because your hand went up and you did the, you know, when you're aware of it, you can see these things and it makes it easy to manipulate people. Like,
Exactly, and that's just the small time stuff. Once you get into somebody's head,
Yeah.
you know, because it's a series of steps. You know, nobody's learning about Xenu on day one. You know, it's all a series of steps, and it's gradual. It's very, very gradual.
See, that's the thing, and that I don't think that comes across to the mainstream public outside of Scientology, because whenever you said, what's Scientology, the South Park episode, or this episode, or Xenu, or Thetans, these are all things that you're not aware of. For the amount of time that you weren't in it, you still weren't aware of it. So that's not even on your radar. Where for the people outside of it, it's the first step they see. Did you hear about this crazy thing? That's their introduction to it. So from the outside, it's just buck mad crazy. But as you say, you don't see it from inside your bubble.
No, not at all. And those who do find out about that stuff, or find out or start seeing the crazy before they're ready for it, quote unquote, they leave. I mean, there's tons of people who come into Scientology and just bounce. So it's not like, everybody who comes in becomes this mind-numb zombie. It's a dedicated effort.
Again, yeah, you're watching the documentaries, you only see the worst and the bad, and that's the whole point. And editing is a fantastic thing. You can make a lot of people see 3 different points of view from the same footage if you just edit it correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Although I will say this, and this is probably important to say at this point, is the Going Clear documentary that was done before Leah's show and stuff. I think it was 2014 or 15 when they did that. That is, if you want the shortest possible way to find out what it feels like to be a Scientologist, or what it's really like in the Church of Scientology, you put 2 hours into that documentary and you'll have it.
What was it called again?
Going Clear.
Going Clear. Is it available?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was an HBO documentary based on a book written by a guy named Lawrence Wright, who was never a Scientologist, never had anything to do with it. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning author. And he did this investigation and write-up of Scientology. And the book is called Going Clear, Scientology and the Prison of Belief. And then Alex Gibney did a documentary out of it. And it's a just fucking brilliant documentary.
Very good.
Yeah.
Is there any other reading that you would recommend on the topic of Scientology? Either from any Scientologist watching
You mean
this,
besides my book?
besides your own books, yeah.
My book? My book, by the way, is not a memoir. It is a critical analysis of Scientology. So, nobody else has actually written that. Everybody writes their memoir. I went, no, I'm not going to do a memoir. I'm going to do something different.
Fair enough.
So if you want to know what Scientology is, my book will tell you. I mean, Going Clear is very good. My book is very good. A book called Inside Scientology by Janet Reitman's not too bad, but the King book, the on the dais, the best one is called
your new book coming out?
called A Piece of Blue Sky.
What was it?
A Piece of Blue Sky.
Yes.
By John Atack. Let's sell them a piece of blue sky is where it comes from. And that was something L. Ron Hubbard said. Let's sell them a piece of blue sky.
Yes.
Blue sky thinking and all that business.
Yeah. So that book is sort of the definitive breakdown of what Scientology is all about. And John's there in the UK. I think he lives down in Nottingham or Birmingham or something.
Yeah, well, being in the UK, I'm in Northern Ireland, so that's on the other side of the water, a whole plane flight and all that there. Being in a tiny country, that's so far away, Probably a whole
4 hours drive. How far away is that?
He's probably less than 300 miles from me, and that would take an entire day to get there, because you'd have to get a fucking boat and everything, and I bought my car in England.
You'd have to go down the M6.
Yeah, I bought my car in England, and I got up at 4:30 in the morning, and I wasn't home till 11 o'clock that night. It took nearly 24 hours to just get to England, lift the car, and drive home again. And I had to get a flight, 2 trains, and a fucking boat home with the car.
Jesus, man. Wow, I can't wait to go over there someday. I've only flown through. I want to go check out the UK.
Yeah,
lot
well,
of places.
anytime you're over here, man, you're always welcome. Definitely hit me up. I'll buy you a pint and show you all the good places. I know a person who came from England to come over and see Ireland, and they didn't leave Belfast. And it's like, you know, you haven't seen anything. You didn't see to me, Northern Ireland and the countryside around here makes the country, not the cities. You want a city, go to London, go to New York or something like that. You know, Belfast, as good as it is for shopping, you could probably go to a different, and you don't need to go to that big city. You know, to me, Northern Ireland is the countryside, the mountains, the fucking bad weather and the mud.
Giants Causeway.
Yeah, the Giants Causeway. Personally, from my point of view, every weekend when my wee girl comes up here, we go and spend an hour every day in the river. Like, properly in the river. She's welly boots, she gets wet. You know, she handed me a net the other day. We go looking for fish. That's beautiful. That's great. That's Northern Ireland to me. Not a fucking city.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
Probably the same way that you can't really experience Scotland if you don't go to the Highlands, right?
And have yourself a haggis.
Yeah.
or when people come to England in inverted commas and don't leave London.
Right.
Okay, there's a lot to see in London. Admittedly, there is a lot to see in London, but you are not seeing England if you don't leave London.
That's right. I do want to take a drive past the St. Hill Manor where Hubbard was down in East Grinstead. I gotta get over there. If I ever go to the UK at all.
At the minute, yeah, we'll see. And flights it is a big journey between America. Now the internet is very shorthand, and there's probably maybe 3 milliseconds or 4, you know, a second of delay between us. But for you to get here, it would take a fuckload of time.
Yeah, I know. We went to Spain last year, and it was awesome. Barcelona, highly recommend it.
Very expensive fucking place too.
And we went.
It's lovely though.
We went via
lovely.
London, or we went through the airport, not Heathrow. What's the other one there?
Gatwick.
Yeah.
Yep, Gatwick. Yeah, we spent half a day in Gatwick. Oh, we didn't even get outside. We were just stuck in the airport. So that's been my only physical experience of the UK. I was going to be there this year. I was invited to speak at one of the conferences there. I'm trying to remember the name of it now.
Dave Con.
Which one?
Was it the
Dave Con.
There was 2 going on in the UK. There was one called we referred to as Dave Con, but there's a proper name for it, Bill.
No, it wasn't Dave Con. It was a different one.
It would have been the other one that we all refused to go to because it was hosted by that dude who was
very misogynistic.
Probably.
No, it wasn't that either. It was a different one from that one. I remember that.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
This was going to be in October. I was going to come out there and do a talk, and then I was going to do a little week-long book tour.
Yes.
And it was going to be awesome. I had it all set up. I was getting help from a guy there who's a good friend of mine, and it all fell apart because of COVID.
Well, Dave Con's supposedly going to be reorganised. Well, a couple of us know Dave. The guy actually organising a Critical Cripple in the chat knows him. We'll definitely bounce your name across. Any excuse to get you over here, man, and have a bit of fun. And as good as this is, you know, you're a very chatty guy. Every instance I've had to interact with you through Manda, I've always had a great time. Like, always been fun.
Awesome, man. I would love to come over. I'll do it for any reason, any justification.
Oh yeah. We'll set up a GoFundMe or something. We'll get you here.
Yeah, it is a little.
If you come to the UK, you have to go to a countryside free party. Even if you don't like electronic music, if you really want to experience what the UK is all about.
Oh, sorry, did my finger slip?
There is nothing like it.
Electronic.
There is nothing like it in the world.
Well, hey, I like electronic music, so I'm down.
Then you would definitely like it. Then you'd be all over it. That'd be great.
Yeah, there's so much I want to experience there. The food, not particularly a selling point.
What?
Depends what kind of food you're into, though. If so British standard food, maybe not, but you've got to remember that now, British food is like Indian food and Chinese food and like Thai food, like. So if you like that sort of thing, you'll love the food here.
I don't. That's my problem. Is that British staple food is awful, and I don't like any Asian food.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah,
It is.
that's a nice way of putting that he's wrong. It's like Dave and cheese.
It's the part about me is I'm very American when it comes to my diet. I'm not very American about a lot of things, but my diet's pretty American.
I put spice in everything, man. Spice in everything. Oh, yeah. We have a phrase over here. You're sweating like a priest in a Barney suit. You want it really spicy.
Yeah, my wife is into the hot food more than I am, but I love Mexican, Spanish food. Oh my God, Spanish food's amazing. Yeah. Anyway,
Paella.
Italian.
Gotta love paella.
Yeah.
Italian food's all right.
Italian food's all right. I like Italian. Love Italian.
I cook. Yeah, I use a lot of olive oil.
We had nachos at Gatwick, and they were awful. They were the worst nachos I have ever had in my life. And I know airport food is bad, but this was British airport food version of nachos, and it was horrifying. We'll never forget that.
So don't eat in Gatwick. Just starve when you get to Gatwick.
Yes. We learned that lesson the hard way, yeah. Anyway.
Well, Chris, I have to go because we're going to have to go and get ready for Manda's show and stuff like that. So, Chris, I just wanted to say, man, I really appreciate it tonight. This has been a bunch of fun. Really, really good fun. And there's lots of things that I was fucking wrong on and you've definitely informed me on. And yeah, I remember seeing you. I searched for it today for about 20 minutes and fuck could I find it. But I seen you on somebody's channel when I first came into the community close to 2 years ago, and I tried to remember who I was watching then and who had interviewed you, and fuck could I not find it. I couldn't find it, but I did see you. I've known of you in the community as the Scientology guy. I never knew your name, and ever since I've met you, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I really, really do appreciate your attitude and giving a chance to everyone putting this information forward there. And if nobody knows, check out Chris's. It's going to be in the description. Look for his channel. He does a call-in show as well. Very similar to the Atheist Experience. Very similar to Talk Heathen. He has a co-host with him. They have a good rapport back and forward. Doesn't look at the chat that much because I pop in and say hello and he never sees it. But other than that, great show. Yeah. I'm gonna have Melissa get better on the chat watch. But it's funny because I do the live Q&As and then it's all about the chat box. So it's back and forth. It's a freaking learning purpose, man. And considering you've all them buttons in front of you and to do everything, it's a lot to control of. Yeah, it's fun. So everybody search for Chris. We've got Brain Bug as well here, and we've got Religious and Bullshit. Religion is Bullshit is going to be here on Tuesday. Brain Bug and me are having discussions. Tomorrow, he specializes in not Monday. Sorry, tomorrow. Yeah, I was just going to say tomorrow. Tuesday's my usual show. Fucked up. Right, so I'm having Religion is Bullshit tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of Irish talk and lots of accents. Brain Bug and me's talking about maybe doing a show on bees because I have upwards of 30 hives with my dad. We've started making mead, we sell it and stuff, and obviously Brain Bug does bugs. So look forward to everybody coming back. And Chris again, man, thank you very much. Everybody, oinking out.
No.